In a bit of a surprising turn of events, DeMar DeRozan is finally heading back home, but not to the team you would expect. That's right, DeMar DeRozan has just been shipped to Sacramento in a sign-and trade. Now, there were three teams involved in this deal, one being the Sacramento Kings, of course, now acquiring a superstar talent in DeMar DeRozan, the other being the Chicago Bulls, who in return for DeMar ended up with Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks. And when you pair that up with the assets they acquired from the Alex Caruso deal, yeah, the Chicago Bulls are having a pretty awful offseason. Yes, they finally decided to blow it all up, but they've really got nothing in return for their star players. And then last but not least, you have the San Antonio Spurs involved in this deal, who walk away with a 2031 unprotected pick swap. Might be Victor Wembanyama's best teammate in the future, who knows? And Harrison Barnes. That's right, after trying to move on from Harrison Barnes for the last 3 or 4 years, he is officially out of Sacramento, along with that massive contract he signed all those years ago. And now that the Kings have a bit more cap space to work with, they've decided to use the rest of their freed up money to lock down DeRozan for the long term, as he has just signed a 3-year deal worth up to $74 million with the Sacramento Kings. And we'll get to talking more about what this means for not only the Kings' future, but the rest of DeRozan's career in a second. For right now, I wanted to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 3,000 subscribers. I feel like we can do that if you subscribe. Every subscription is greatly appreciated. All right, now let's get back to talking about DeRozan heading to the Kings. You see, DeRozan is going to be turning 35 years old by next month. And by the time his contract ends, he'll be well into his late 30s. Now, can DeRozan produce at the same level he has been for the last 15 years? That's the question on everybody's mind. Now, if we take a look at DeMar DeRozan's stats from just his last year with the Chicago Bulls, there are a few positives to take away from it. I mean, first, you've got to consider the fact that this guy played 79 games for a Bulls team who could barely stay healthy. And he had averaged a career-high 37.8 minutes per game. That is the most amount of minutes he's played in a single season, and it's all because the Bulls couldn't stay healthy. But he was doing that at the age of 34 for the Bulls. And because of that, he was able to go out and average 24 points, I want to say about 4 rebounds and 5 assists while shooting 48% from the field, and from the three-point line, 33%. He's never been the best three-point shooter. However, his mid-range game has been one of the best that the NBA has ever seen. Hell, he finished second in Comeback Player of the Year voting. Just previously, the year before, he finished third in that category. So it seems like DeMar DeRozan has been making a comeback for the last few years now. Honestly, I feel like the failures he had in Chicago were not nearly his fault. It was more or less just the front office choosing to make the wrong move over and over again, and also trying to rely on stars who were never there for the team. And I'm not talking about DeRozan when I say that. You see, this guy has been a 6-time All-Star, and 2 of those All-Star appearances came while he was on the Bulls, and he was only on the Bulls for 3 seasons. Some of his best years have been in a Chicago Bulls jersey. I mean, in his first year in Chicago back in 2022, arguably his best year with the team, he ended up averaging almost 28 points a game, had about 5 rebounds, and 4.9 assists a night while shooting 50% from the field. You know, this man has never played under 60 games in his entire 15-year career. It doesn't matter what team he's been on, he's shown up, which is something that I feel like is very important for the Sacramento Kings. I mean, this guy, you know, they're taking a risk on him because he will be pretty old throughout the entirety of his contract, and so availability does matter for DeRozan as he enters a new era in his career with the Sacramento Kings. And speaking of the Kings, let's dive into a bit of their history. You see, this team has been god-awful since the mid-2000s, They hadn't reached 500 for nearly 2 decades. Hell, they hadn't made a playoff appearance in almost 2 decades until 2023 when everything changed. You see, they already had drafted their star, De'Aaron Fox, plenty of years before, and De'Aaron Fox had been great for the Kings leading up until his first playoff appearance, but he always missed that second piece, that duo that he never had until the team decided to trade Tyrese Halliburton. And what they got from that in return was a good big man, the perfect big man to pair alongside De'Aaron Fox in Domantas Sabonis. And ever since Domantas Sabonis has got there, the Kings have felt like real contenders, or at least like they have a chance to, you know, make something happen in the Western Conference. I mean, in Sabonis' first year, the Kings went out and they finished 3rd in the West with a record of 48 wins and 34 losses. 2023 was a great year for the Kings. You know, that's when they started lighting the beam. That's really when they got put on the map. And then 2024 rolls around. The team didn't change too drastically, but I think that's where their problem lied. You see, the Kings didn't really get worse from the 2023 season. However, they ended up underperforming in 2024 because the rest of the West got a lot better. While the Kings only lost 2 more games in 2024 and finished with a record of 46 and 36, you know, they missed the playoffs entirely. From a 3 seed to whiffing on the playoffs, and it's all because they didn't make, you know, a big roster change, and you didn't expect them to, but none of their players really took a big leap up. I mean, Mike Brown, he was the head coach the first year they made the playoffs, and he still continues to be their head coach. I think that stability at the head coaching position is great for this organization, and I think Mike Brown is a fantastic head coach. And now that they have finally made a big move to their roster in acquiring DeRozan, the Kings might actually be a real threat in the West. I mean, they got DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis. That's a pretty solid big 3 right there. And then the rest of their starting lineup will probably be filled up with Kevin Huerter and I want to say Keegan Murray, with Malik Monk coming off the bench. So now if you take into account the big 3, along with their 3 solid role players, you've got a pretty solid lineup right there. Now they are 1 or 2 pieces away from having a full rotation, but there still is time in free agency, and you know, the Kings might not be done making moves here. Now last year, they had to rely on De'Aaron Fox to win games, and obviously, I mean, he is their star. He went out and averaged 26.5 points, 5.6 assists, 4.6 rebounds, while shooting 46% from the field, and from the three-point line, about 37%, okay? And De'Aaron Fox is a great player, but can he lead this team to a championship? Because that is clearly the Sacramento Kings' goal. They have just gone all in and are trying to win a championship right now. I mean, De'Aaron Fox hasn't even gotten out of the first round yet. However, a player with plenty of playoff experience and deep playoff runs is DeMar DeRozan. You have to remember, in this guy's prime, he was making the conference finals as the best player on his team. And now that Harrison Barnes is gone, you know, DeMar DeRozan clearly has the most playoff experience on this young Kings roster, something they will definitely be needing if they are trying to win a championship right now. And with DeMar DeRozan scoring added to the mix, I feel like they can be a top 10 team when it comes to offensive rating, because last year, they weren't top 10 in either offense or defensive rating. There wasn't one side of the ball where they really thrived on, right? So now that DeMar DeRozan's on the team, maybe their offense gets taken to the next level, and it's enough for them to make the playoffs again, let alone win a championship. Anyway, that's about it for this video. Really just wanted to cover the move of DeMar to Sacramento because I find that really fascinating, right? It's pretty cool. Anyway, like I said, catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.